Well, I'm excited to talk to you both about El Salvador. I've been 5 or 6 times now over the space of a couple of years, a range of different experiences, and uh, I love the country. I love the pupusas. I love the people. uh, it's not exactly. I don't think it's always exactly what people expect. But I'm interested to get your perspectives. Both your first time?
Yeah.
First time in El Salvador, yes.
Yeah. Okay. And you agree to go together?
Yeah.
Spend some time down there, meet some people. Were Max and Stacy down there?
Yeah. We did an event down there with them.
Okay. So, start with you, Jeff. How do you sum up your experience?
Yeah. So Austin just said it. I've traveled a lot of the world, and so I've been to many third world countries and or emerging countries, and it was that. But in all of those experiences, and El Salvador was no different. What you realize is what you hear in the news is very different than the experience on the ground. People all over the world are similar to you and I, same hopes, dreams for a better future. And when you're actually meeting people on the ground, and spending time with them in small villages or wherever, you just realize just tons of beautiful people that are trapped in a system that doesn't exactly look like that. And in El Salvador, I think there's a lot of Bitcoiners that think, okay, Bitcoin's everywhere there, and it's really early, and it's experiment. It's tons of hope for the country, but also there's a lot of people even in government that don't know how fast or what's going to happen here, and so it's early there. A lot of people are trying to find their way there, and so yes, McDonald's takes it, Starbucks takes it, all the big chains take it, but some of the smaller places, and especially outside of El Zonte, don't yet. And I wouldn't say we went to schools that were learning it. I went to Bitcoin meetup where you saw a guy he calls him, you probably know him, Bitcoin Taxi, and he's created a business, and now he employs 3 other people as Bitcoin Taxi because and so it's changed his life. And so when you start to see that, you can't come away from that and not kind of see hope and where this takes the country. But it is still really early.
Yeah, I mean, hope's it's like a profound word for the experience you have there, because it isn't what you expect. You have this expectation you can get there, and everyone's accepting Bitcoin, understands that they don't, but you discover these little stories of people there's a guy down in Zonte who he saved a bit of Bitcoin early on, and he ended up getting his teeth done. I don't know if you met him. The old guy with the cowboy hat.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I always forget his name. But you see these little pockets of stories, and you read, okay, there's some hope here. There's something for the future. How about yourself, Austin? What was the experience like for you?
So I've been living in kind of Latin America the last couple of years. Certainly, every Latin American country is very different, but I think all of them are suffering from some of the consequences of being very dependent on the U.S. dollar and petrodollar as their kind of base reserve currency, whether or not it was officially adopted, like in El Salvador, the U.S. dollar peg, or not. So I've certainly seen the effect that the pandemic and the money printing has had on economies that I've visited. Seeing it in El Salvador was really different in the sense that Jeff talks about hope. We were talking about this idea of like hope. A lot of the hope I've seen in other places in Latin America, or the hopelessness, was tied to just an institutional belief that our lot in life will never change, or a very kind of misdirected kind of just general sense of hope, whether that comes from religion, family, things can always be worse, but at least we have each other type, like very generalized hope. This was the first time when I talked to people, as we said, students, people in the streets, you ask them, how do you feel? And the answers were almost consistently, I'm hopeful for the first time. And I would go a little deeper and say, what's made you hopeful? Sometimes they knew we were involved in Bitcoin, sometimes didn't want to broadcast it at all. And the stories had a very, very common theme, very much tied to, a little bit of skepticism, but tons of hopefulness that this time it's different. And that was tied to how gangs were being treated, how the crackdown on violence was being done. A lot of hope that Bukele and his administration live up to the promise, but some healthy skepticism. But when you went and talked to the children, we were in a school that was K to 12. The school went from 100 students last year to 825 this year, because so many parents have re-enrolled their kids where they didn't before. They had pulled their kids out of school and they were working in markets. They were working in family-owned businesses. And the school has now exploded. We asked him, how many do you lose to gangs? He said, since February, around 10% of the entire student body I lost to gangs. He said, and we were like, is it economic? Is it peer pressure? Are they being forced? And he said, it's pure economics. He said, one of the students, it was, I guess, two brothers. Their mother got cancer. They left school, worked for the gangs. Their mother died. They came back to school. And so, you're talking to these kids and you're asking, we went into the classrooms and we just asked, what's your favorite social network? And they're just like every other child. It's TikTok. It's WhatsApp. What's your favorite music app? I'm into SoundCloud, So, you see the power of TCP/IP as this unifying force that has brought this kind of sense of equality and hope. But they do not have the same, when we talk about Bitcoin, I like to use the analogy of snakes and ladders. But the system as it's designed, the board game, has nothing but broken ladders. Right? Like, it's impossible to climb up, but you can definitely slide down. This is a country who's finally seeing a few ladders that work, and they're desperately just trying to land on that spot. And so when you ask them, like, what do you hope to be when you grow up? It's like graphic designer, and they're showing you their skills with Photoshop. And you just realize, you pair that with a little bit of education. What's your favorite video game? Roblox. There's so much potential there, and untapped human potential, that I think a little bit of resources and a little bit of opportunity creates this outsized outcome. And that's what led me very hopeful for what I saw.
Depending on when this goes out, we'll probably have to let people know and kind of timestamp it. But there is definitely some challenges with the administration there right now. And this is something I've been fully conscious of, is that are we at risk sometimes of putting too much hope, too much pressure on what is a government and what is an administration that could essentially bring a risk to Bitcoin. And part of me has some real empathy for Bukele with a gang situation where he has been accused of doing deals with the gangs to try and reduce violence. And now he's in a situation where he's trying to clamp down on the gangs and he's receiving criticism. Whatever solution he tries, he seems to receive some criticism. I have a massive amount of empathy there. Are you okay talking about your experience while you were there? Because you went there on the day martial law was announced.
And so let's get into that. And I think I gave it a talk to the YPO group there.
Okay.
In San Salvador, and the YPO group, old money, typically very against Bukele. The owner of the main newspaper there, very against Bukele and rights and freedoms, and so much so that he's like, how dare you lock up people with no trial or anything else? So, and he asked me after again, because he's so against Bukele, and the whole group they were against Bitcoin, and so there's a whole part of the audience that is very against Bitcoin and the wealthy of El Salvador. And I broke through that group. But one of the things that he asked me, he said, what is the worst thing about Bitcoin? Name the worst thing about Bitcoin. And I said, you have to accept that people you dislike completely are on it too, and they make the network stronger. And over time, there's actually nothing that Bukele can do to hurt Bitcoin. It will keep on emerging, and he makes it stronger by bringing a whole bunch of people on. And then that network will expand, and it'll make the people stronger. And if he doesn't do what the people want, he will be ousted. That's what, and you could say that it's probably the most misunderstood thing about Bitcoin, because people trap their own beliefs about a person, hero or villain, and they attach that to the network, and it's completely independent.
My experience when I was there the last time filming was there were anti-Bitcoin protests, but they were really anti-Bukele protests. I made the point if he'd have banned Bitcoin, they'd have all been protesting for it.
Yeah. So that's the point in this, and you know this in this network. It doesn't actually matter who you are. Every additional voice and making it stronger is bringing us on more and more people and makes the entire network stronger. And that network change from one system that cannot work anymore to a new system that can, actually puts people in control. A peer-to-peer network, the people are more in control, and the government loses power as a result. So he could be a narcissistic leader. He might not be, he might be. I don't know him personally, but I know he made Bitcoin better, and he's making Bitcoin better by bringing, and as a result, he's going to make a whole bunch of his people, how many people take hold of it and drive that out, how much business comes out of new Bitcoin startups out of that creates real wealth in the country, and that's a feeling of hope. You have to dismiss that personal attack, whatever side you're on from Bitcoin, the network.
So my experience, obviously, I share a lot of Jeff's views, especially when it comes to like Bitcoin and the pros and cons. I had a little bit of a contrasting experience. I landed there with my fiance on Saturday. They had declared martial law. We were driving to El Zonte, and I've traveled in dangerous countries before, so I take certain security precautions. I'm taking pictures of the license plates. I've notified, Jeff and some security backup teams I have in terms of, like, if necessary, deploy KNR insurance and come find me. You just never know, right? And while that kind of cautionary, like, oh my God, what have I got myself into, and the worry can run rampant, I also, just flat out asked one of the security drivers we had, I was like, how do you feel? I mean, it obviously was a really rough week. And he was like, I'm so hopeful. And I was like, really, what makes you hopeful? I mean, he told me the story. He said, 6 years ago, I shot 2 gang members while on the job.
Wow.
Protecting his
clients.
Jesus.
He goes, I was sent to prison for 4 days and I was waiting to die. And it was only because my security company decided to bail me out that I didn't end up in the main prison where I would be killed by the gangs for killing those 2 gang members. He goes, so I barely escaped dying. And he goes, every day since coming to work, ever since then, I've lived in fear that if I ever was faced in that decision, would I let my clients get killed, or would I put me and my family at risk? He goes, the Bukeles have now made self-defense the standard. So if I shoot a bunch of gang members defending my clients, I'm not afraid of going to prison. He goes, so it's open season on criminals, as it should be, because they're a scourge to our country. Now, as a peace and love Canadian hippie, very blessed child who was not exposed to that level of violence, it can be shocking. My answer wants to be kumbaya. Someone pulls a gun and I want to give them let's hug it out, right? But that's just not the reality of the environment. And it's a very blessed and very, frankly, naive point of view in how do you deal with the real world violence that he has grown up in. And so, that contrast is very vivid. But for him, the changes that are being made and the idea that criminals got thrown in jail without any trial is absolutely a blessing. For me, who believes, there's a famous quote that peace is not the absence of violence. It's actually the absence of, it's when you have the absence of justice. So only the reestablishment of justice with no violence can actually lead to peace, right? So you look at an environment like that where there's systemic, multi-generational violence, where, the economic problems and, frankly, a lot of the problems that were, in some regards, not necessarily their own, right?
Well, the gangs came from the US.
Well, gangs came from a lot of the other countries and were exported. Some of the economic sovereignty that they sought at various stages was essentially stolen from them through a foreign policy that required them to be a debtor nation. that are required through, IMF loans and through selling off of their major industries that turned their citizens into essentially slave workers.
This is a really important point.
Mm.
Because a lot of people look at they don't look at the cause. They look at the gangs. They get scared of the gangs and say that's a terrible country. All of those people are terrible, and they don't realize the kid that came out of school to save his mom had no other choice, no other economic choice to come out of school but to join a gang. And if they were in the same situation, they would too. They just they judge the cause is an economic disparity. The cause of all of that is when people can't make it, and they try to and so they turn to gangs because it's a way that they can make it.